Blinded after a case of childhood diabetes, he was a voracious, passionate, and dazzling sophisticated consumer of literature who taught English here for more than 40 years, and as Fred just mentioned, kept writing until the very end of his life. His final book about Beckett's heirs was published this spring. I know Gary wanted desperately to see it in print, but didn't quite make it. He never complained about the impositions the disease caused him, instead seeking constantly to emphasize the positive parts of his life. And his life was one that lasted close to 3 decades more than many had predicted. After receiving his mother Estelle's kidney at age 44, he called it a gift of life twice given. He was expected to survive 5 years at the most, but the kidney functioned for 22 years. And then, in a remarkable coincidence, Phyllis was also a kidney match. She gave Gary one of hers, and it helped him make it through nearly another decade. These medical developments aside, and despite living the vast majority of his adult life in the Midwest, Gary never lost touch with his Brooklyn Jewish roots. He was an Adelman through and through, bawdy, eager to engage in verbal combat with the dual goals of winning and arriving at higher levels of understanding, and invariably equating volume with quality of argument. In short, he was a vivid and unforgettable presence. Mom always talked about how Gary got lit by literature while at Columbia University. The fire never went out. Gary came of age intellectually during an era before postmodernism had fully gotten its hold in English departments throughout the country. And while he ultimately became proficient in that approach for his final project, he brought a more basic and central concern to his reading of Dostoevsky, Beckett, Conrad, Kertész, Lawrence, and all the other giants he devoured. He used their work and their lives to gain insight into the meaning of life itself. My brother John, who's right here, and I talked about how walking with Gary through the streets of Champaign was not only like attending a private literary seminar, it also left us with the distinct impression that many of the characters he was discussing with such precision and gusto were at least as alive to him as we who were standing right next to him. But this is not to say that Gary's head was only in books. He took enormous interest in and displayed tremendous generosity toward me. I only saw Gary a couple times as a child. The first time, he asked to see our faces with his hands, but maintained increasing contact with him starting in 1987, when I first visited Phyllis and him at the home here, where they lived for their more than 30 years together. Gary was an invariably engaged conversation partner on the phone and in person, asking probing questions about what I was reading, what I was working on, and what I was thinking about for my next move. Above all, he inquired about and emphasized the importance in my life of my wife Dunreath and our son Aiden. At the end of each conversation, Gary thanked me for calling him and let me know that he believed in my ability to realize my deepest held dreams. And this generosity was not limited to me, but extended to his family, colleagues, friends, and former students, and evidenced by so much of us being here and the folks who weren't able but sent their thoughts. How Gary lived his life and how much he gave was a source of relief that has turned into gratitude. He suffered a lot in the last year as the ailments kept multiplying and basic functions like eating and walking became harder. Dunreath and I saw it when we visited him in late August after dropping Aiden at Tulane. The next morning, at 4:25 a.m., he wrote the final email I received from him. Jeff, I hope you found us scintillating. I felt good, swept by ideas. Your wife is very lovely. Gary. While I appreciated the compliment and always enjoyed spending time with Gary, we could feel his energy drooping. Gary wanted very much to attend my brother Mike and his bride Annie's wedding in October, but his body just would not let him. When I called him shortly after returning from the West Coast, he compared himself to Poland, surrounded by 3 empires, but with its flag flying high. The monsters are at the gate, he said. I'm in closure. But not in so much closure that he couldn't draw on his prodigious memory to quote Cervantes' Don Quixote and tell me, the next time we speak, make haste, tell me all, and let not an atom be left behind in the ink bottle. John and I went down to Champaign twice after that. The second time was the day before he died. Gary's hair never turned gray, but as he lay in the hospital bed in hospice care, we could tell his ravaged body's final breath was near. I leaned over and told him quietly that I loved him, that I appreciated all he had done for me, and that it would be over soon. The next day, mercifully, it was. Gary, I thank you for the many gifts you gave me and all those who knew you. The gift of hearty laughter and shared company, the gift of a disciplined mind, an unerring hunt for emotional truth, and a compassionate soul, the gift of unceasing grit and the ability to hold in front of him and feel life's deeper meaning. I thank you, I miss you, and I love you.